Hey everybody, this is Karen Capricioso here with Intersector Partners L3C, and today I'm going to be chatting with Sonia Ulibari from Girls Incorporated of Metro Denver. Hi Sonia.
Hi everyone. Karen, good to be here this morning.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Before we get started, I wanted to just highlight why Rick and I thought it would be a good idea to have some conversations with nonprofits about resiliency and how they're doing in this time of COVID and what's happening with their organizations. In the early days, we started noticing that there were organizations as they adapted to this new reality of COVID that really kind of hit the ground running and adapted programs and operations pretty well to be able to adapt and adjust. And we were thinking, what is it that's making some organizations do really well and other organizations struggle a bit more with turning on that switch? I also had heard we're big fans of the podcast How I Built This with Guy Raz, and he was talking to big corporate leaders about resiliency. And I thought, well, gosh, we have some resilient nonprofits right here in our backyard in Colorado. So let's see what the leaders of those organizations have to say. And we're starting today with Sonia. We're going to talk to a few people and roll these out over the course of a few weeks and just try and give people a sense of what's going on. I think that's it in terms of context. So let's dive in. I know you all want to hear from Sonia more than me. So welcome to Sonia. She's the CEO of Girls Incorporated of Metro Denver and has been there since 2012. Is that right?
Yes, I'm 8.5 years into my role at Girls Inc.
Wow, the time is flying by. Sonia and I know each other through the nonprofit sector in general, but also Girls Inc. participated in the Colorado Nonprofit Social Enterprise Exchange cohort. Gosh, 2013, I think. Pretty soon after you started. Yeah, and Sonia's led the organization through some pretty significant strategic transitions and adjustments, but nothing probably as big or dramatic or sudden as COVID. So, yeah. First of all, Sonia, will you tell us about what Girls Inc. is and what it does?
Sure. So Girls Inc. is part of the Girls Inc. National Network. So we're an affiliate here in Denver. Girls Inc. nationally is the oldest serving girls organization in the United States. We have a network of about 80 affiliates across the country. In Denver, we have been doing work for just about 38 years now. Each year, we get to deliver programs to about 2,200 girls and youth from across our community. So Girls Inc. is centered on an approach that we call a whole girl approach that really looks comprehensively at girls' needs around access issues, support, career development, academics and school engagement, leadership, and advocacy. And so we do programming in several ways. One is we have a facility located in the West Colfax neighborhood where we do year-round out-of-school time programs, including comprehensive summer programs that we're getting ready to launch, and then also to school-based programs in schools and community organizations across the city.
Hey, you do a lot, and you're in person. The vast majority of the work that you do is in person.
Yeah, I think one of the real values and beauties of Girls Inc.'s work is that we have such high in-person touch with girls and families. And, in the current climate, that's one of the things that has been, really challenging. A typical summer at Girls Inc., we talk about how the buildings are bursting with girls. And in any other year, that's a really, really wonderful thing. This year, it's a real challenge.
I bet. Well, tell us what's happened at the organization since COVID. So there was this day when the NBA shut down for the season. And I think that was the day that, for me at least, I said, oh, okay, this is for real. We're going to have a lot of changes coming. So what were the changes? What happened in those early first days after stay-at-home orders at Girls Inc.? How did you adapt?
Yeah, we had to kind of look at two things about our model. One is we had to prepare our main, kind of facility that hosts after school programs for a shift in the way that the school day was going to happen. So really, we have taken our cues because of where we're located from Denver Public Schools. And when it was clear that they were starting to close down and that they were going into this extended spring break model, that we also had to follow suit. The other thing that we had to do is think about our business. So as an organization that runs a social enterprise, we had to prepare our coffee shop to also close down as well, and to follow the orders that were coming out from the state. So I would say it was a very quick transition into that space, and one that I think many of us thought early on was something that would be temporary. And so that continues to be one of the challenges for us is knowing that it is taking kind of much longer, and it has evolved into something that many of us didn't expect.
For sure. Yeah, here we are over 2 months later from the first date of the stay-at-home order. What have you been doing? Well, is your staff all working from home now?
So our staff moved into a remote model. So the majority of our staff are primarily working from home. We have closed again the coffee shop. So that is non-operational. We're planning to reopen, and I know we'll talk a little bit about kind of how we emerge from this in a couple weeks. But the one I think really beautiful thing is that, you know, we also asked ourselves, like, how do we show up differently for community in this space? Like, we all had to kind of move into these remote environments and then take stock of how we were going to shift back into engaging with community in a meaningful, impactful way, using a different service delivery model.
So what have you been doing? How are you still serving girls and families? I mean, it's just, I think about what it would be like to suddenly be working at home and have your kiddos suddenly at home in school, full, or however many hours they have to do it, trying to juggle all of that. So you are trying to help families who are in situations like that. What have you been doing for programming?
You know, I think the most important thing that we did early on was not make assumptions. And so I think it's really easy in the space that we hold in the sector to assume what we think people need, to assume who we think is most at risk, and to feel like we're sort of the experts in meeting those needs. And so the first really important step that our team took was talk directly to girls and families. So before we laid out a plan for how we would shift, we wanted to understand more about how they needed us and wanted us to shift, what they wanted to engage in, what they didn't want to engage in, and really looked at a holistic approach to understanding, again, those needs and gaps. So we took about 2 weeks to do a full survey of our center-based families, where we collected information about their interest in connecting to virtual programming, knowing that, you know, so many families were trying to figure out how to just get online to finish the school year. We assessed things like the digital divide, what internet access looked like in households, what technology equipment looked like in households, how many units they had, how many children were in those households. We also looked at things like food insecurity, safety, and risk of violence, and then also to just kind of wrap around general needs that families have. So that data and collecting that feedback directly from, you know, the individuals, both young people and adults that we work with, helped us to think about a formulated plan for Girls Inc.'s response. So that helped to develop, you know, both a programmatic approach as well as a direct service, immediate need response.
Very smart. I love that. Engaging from the folks who know best what they need rather than assuming, especially in this brave new world where none of us really know what the heck we're doing. So have you adapted programs? Are you still offering after school programming? What have you been doing?
So there was a couple things. So one is 90% of the girls and families who were enrolled in the spring asked us to continue virtual programs. So that was really good to hear, and understand that we were doing something, again, that was in response to what their request was. So we put together programming for, you know, all of the age groups that we serve. So elementary school, middle school, high school and college programming, our Bold Baristas, and then also programs in the STEM area. So we have a kind of a flagship STEM program called Eureka. So we developed virtual learning plans across all of those areas with a real emphasis in one-to-one connection, and checking in weekly with girls and families to understand not just what they needed kind of programmatically from a skills or learning perspective, but to really support the social and emotional needs that they had. And so that was something that our team, because of the model at Girls Inc., was pretty well equipped to do. We just had to, again, move it into a different platform in order to deliver it. The other, I think, really important thing that we did is we recognized that there was a gap in dinner service in the West Colfax neighborhood close to our facility. So breakfast and lunch was taken care of, but with that gap, we were able to talk with the city, have a partnership with the Office of Children's Affairs, and do daily dinner distribution from our site. So we've been delivering about 250 to 300 meals per week during that 3:30 to 5:30 timeframe. And then additionally, we were able to organize an emergency food and supply bank at Girls Inc. So what was our dance room has now become that bank, so that when families are accessing and children are accessing those meals, they can also get other supplies to take home with them. So that includes shelf-stable food, water, some household items, and things like diapers and feminine hygiene products. Those were a real gap that some of our families were identifying in terms of need, and so we've tried to help to fill it through that way. So, we pivoted both from a programmatic perspective as well as, again, shifted the way that we look at engaging and interacting with community and making sure that we're pushing out some of those needs as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. Have you all been able to access any funding to support these changes? I know it's not free to just suddenly pivot the way you function.
Yeah, we were able to access some support from the Denver Foundation. We got a small community COVID grant to help do some of that work.
Great.
We also received some funding from Tony Gramsci's Youth Services to stock our emergency food and supply bank. And then the partnership with the Office of Children's Affairs has really allowed us to bring in those meals daily and then also distribute them. Recently, we also added produce boxes that are coming in from We Don't Waste once a week that we're able to distribute out to families as well.
Oh, that's so great. And it must be really good for your team to be able to see the families that you serve in person, even if it's with a mask or quickly moving through the lines, just to be able to have that human interaction.
Yeah, we have a whole layer of staff that just felt incredibly activated during this time and has been really focused and adamant about doing frontline work. Where kind of Girls Inc. held a different kind of programmatic space before this. And so I think that was really powerful for me to see that it was not like a top-down approach to how we deliver services, but that it came from our community and it came up through, many of our staff members who do program delivery and who saw that need and wanted to meet it.
Very cool. One of the things that I meant to mention earlier on in the intro was resilience being defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. And it's also the ability to spring back into shape or elasticity. So it sounds like you have a whole team of people who were able to do that in pretty short order.
Yeah, it was a really quick shift. And again, a response that I think was innate to a lot of our staff. It was something that was in them already. And when I think about what that looks like in this work, I go back and think about how important it is to have the variance of lived experiences inside an organization and on a team and in the leadership. Because when you come through the lens of that lived experience where you have had to work through some of these challenges directly, the level of response and reaction and empathy I have found to be heightened and really distinct and beautiful during this time.
That's fantastic. I love that. Actually, one of the questions I was going to ask you later, I think fits here. It's related to how much you think Girls Inc.'s ability to be resilient in this time comes from you as a leader and how much of it is organizational. So something that you've built into the organization, maybe through hiring practices or flexibility or something along those lines.
Yeah. I think it's both. I think in organizations, policies and practices reflect um, the structure of decision making in an organization and reflect who was in those positions of power. And that's why I think it's so important, again, to really think about how we intentionally build in that lived experience in the communities that we're serving, in the pockets of schools and neighborhoods that we're reaching into, and to have that firsthand on our team. And for us at Girls Inc., something that we have always valued and tried to really integrate is an anti-oppressive approach to the work, and an approach that's rooted in equity and rooted in cultures of inclusion. And so that for me is something that I think can get stuck in a theoretical space,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of talk about what those things mean and look like. But to integrate them, to implement them effectively, I think is at a whole nother level. And that's really something that we have been focused in, is how to implement those beliefs and values each day in our practices and our policies and how we engage with each other, and then to measure them and hold ourselves accountable to them. And I think that because we have built an infrastructure and the capacity and the culture that supports that approach, that has helped us to make this shift more quickly.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that. I think that that will be meaningful to a lot of people who listen to this interview or watch our conversation today. Um, okay, we're starting to reopen parts of Colorado, and I just heard the other day that youth summer camps are on the table with some restrictions, of course, rules and limitations. What is next for Girls Inc.? Where are you headed?
Yeah. Summer is, like I said, it's sort of, this incredibly joyous time for us at the organization, and a time where, because we get so many girls on site every day for so long, that, it has just been this real time of energy and heart and connection. And so for us, knowing that, even the guidelines and parameters that have come out are so, rightly so restrictive in how camps and programs like ours have to operate, we really felt that that it was going to compromise a lot of what the goodness is about Girls Inc.,
Mm.
especially in the summer. And so we did what we did in the spring. We went back to families and girls and said, here are the things that we are weighing. Here are the options that we are looking at. Tell us what you need, what you want, what's going to be the most beneficial and impactful for your family and for your girls this summer. And we looked at kind of 4 areas of the work. So we looked at assessing and understanding health and risks. And so for us, that was also looking, in addition to kind of the COVID related health risks that we're all really aware of, also the risks of, what does it look like when youth are unsupervised during the summer,
Mm.
when families have to go back to work, when childcare accessibility is really limited, when older siblings are having to care for younger siblings. And so we try to figure out kind of where this sweet spot is for Girls Inc. across that entire continuum of risk,
Mm.
where we could ensure that we were being, safe, that we were following guidelines, that we were delivering the experience that girls and families expect from us, and that we were also understanding kind of the risk factors involved. So we came up with this approach that we're calling hands-on remote learning, which we believe is really distinct from virtual programming. For us, it's about engaging young people as the leaders in their own exploration, in their own development, in incorporating learning practices and applying those in their daily life. And so we are using that approach for the summer, which anchors on kind of a remote learning environment, but equips girls with all the tools and resources they need to apply those things outside of being on screen with us. So for example, if we're doing a gardening class, a girl will receive her garden bed and her soil and her seeds and the things that she needs to plant that and put that into practice in her life, and to watch that cultivate and grow. And then the time that she spends with us is about asking questions or sharing updates are talking about the learnings that have happened. So our real goal with this strategy this summer, because we can't have girls on site the way we would normally have them, is to give them all of those things that they need to continue to connect them with our programs on a daily basis, and to equip them as the leaders in the learning this summer. So that's how we're approaching it from kind of an elementary and middle school perspective. It's interesting because even in our STEM programs, we're delivering things this summer like hearts that will be dissected on kitchen tables. And so things that, girls can follow along through an online class, but that also they can, actually physically do in person. And so, that's probably an extreme example of what we'll be delivering this summer, but we expect that we'll be doing these learning kits that they'll be distributed weekly to girls over the next couple months.
Oh, I love that. How fun. If the girls figure out how to deal with rabbits in the garden, will you let me know?
I'll let you know.
It's a big struggle at the moment, trying to figure out how to keep them out of the vegetables. I love this.
Yeah, the other thing that we're going to do is we're opening back up the cafe, so the Bold Beans Cafe, and we're going to do that really slowly. And one thing that has allowed us to kind of hold until we feel like we're ready is that we have continued to pay all of our baristas for the entire closure. Mm-hmm. So Bold Beans supports typically anywhere between 8 and 10 high school and college girls, who work in the cafe, who work with the business, and, who rely on those dollars to help with tuition, to help cover family expenses, to pay for, gas or cars. And so we did not want the burden of the shutdown to fall on them. And so we really were lucky in that we were able to continue to pay them their average weekly wages through this entire period.
That's fabulous. Did you all access PPP loans or do any kind of government?
We were able to get a PPP loan for business operations.
Great. Glad to hear you got it. In the first round or the second?
We got it in the first round.
Good for you. That was a Herculean feat, I think.
We have a really amazing director of finance too who helped to accomplish that.
That's great. Okay, well, thank you for sharing so much about what your organization's been doing. I would love to know how people can support you and help during this time. I know people are struggling financially themselves, but people are also looking for ways that they can engage and help in any way that they can. So what matters most to you all right now in terms of help and support?
Yeah. I would say, share the work that Girls Inc.'s doing. You can connect to us at Girls Inc. Denver on our social media pages, so Facebook and Twitter. I would say, general support for the work that's happening. So we're going to continue meal programs in the emergency supply bank all through the summer. We're also doing things like checking out laptops and Chromebooks to girls and families who don't have access. And then we have eliminated all of our summer program fees for the remainder of the fiscal year because we don't want any barrier to be in place from a girl or family accessing what we're doing at Girls Inc. So I would say check out our website, girlsincdenver.org. You can also support the coffee shop either by ordering products or by stopping in when it's safe to do so. Like I said, June 15th is our first opening date for the cafe. And then also to just, of course, support throughout the year. Volunteers, donations are always something that we need and will happily accept.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sonia. I really appreciate you taking the time to share the Girls Inc. story and what you've done to build a resilient organization and serve the folks that mean so much to you along the way without even skipping a beat. It's really inspiring story. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much. And it's a testament to our team. So we appreciate the ability to share it today.
Okay, take care.